Let me start by wishing everybody a happy Jamhuri, although these are not happy circumstances. But let us be proud that this is our country and that at the end of the day we own it. These charlatans who pretend they are leading us are not the owners of Kenya. We, you and I, every citizen is the owner of Kenya. And on that score, let me just remind people of the preamble to our new constitution. It has 8 pillars that I would like to just read because I think it's important that we understand what we have struggled for, what we are living for as a nation. The preamble goes like this. We, the people of Kenya, number 1, acknowledging the supremacy of Almighty God of all creation. Number 2, honoring those who heroically struggled to bring freedom and justice to our land. Number 3, proud of our ethnic, cultural, religious diversity and determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation. Number 4, respectfully of the environment, which is our heritage, and determined to sustain it for the benefit of future generations. Number 5, committed to nurturing and protecting the well-being of the individual, the family, communities, and the nation. Number 6, recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. The rule of law. Number 7, exercising our sovereignty and our inalienable right to determine the form of governments of our country and having participated fully in the making of this constitution. And number 8, adopt and act and give this constitution to ourselves and to future generations. This was the responsibility of the Ruto regime in 2013 to implement. This was bequeathed to them after it was passed in 2010. And that is where it all went wrong. They decided that this constitution with this preamble does not work for their intentions. And they moved it aside. Today, we are living their mess. And the greatest mess of all is a massive looting that has happened in this country that is unprecedented. Even if you count whatever scandals you want, from independence Kenya, from Uhuru's father, to the whatever you may think Kibaki may have done, I can tell you those 50 years, there is nothing that matches the kind of looting, the theft that has been done on the Kenyan people today and for generations to come. That was done by the Ruto regime and is being continued by this current regime of William Samoei Ruto. I agree with the earlier speakers. We cannot wait to 2027. William Ruto has been in power now for 820 days. We have defined him. Can you imagine the next election is in 985 days left? Are we going to wait? How much more pain are we going to endure? Because this is just pure pain. He cannot solve this problem. They created it, and it is a total economic mess. The greatness of this is that now this pain has made Kenyans aware of the revolution at hand. The revolution at hand is the economic liberation of our country. And that economic liberation is just as hard as the political one that we had gone through before, both for the first and second liberation, political liberation of this country. That is what climaxed in the 2010 Constitution. We are now in economic liberation. And the people that have caused us and subjugated us are going to fight us just as hard as those who have become dictators and tyrants of the political regime. These are economic tyrants, and they intend to subjugate us. The good thing is that they've caused such a mess that every day they are in power, we are going to have more and more pain. And it very simply is summarized this way. They decided in 2013 the Constitution does not work for them. Chapter 12, which is primarily on our public finance management, does not work for them because their intention was to loot. Uhuru Kenyatta was a dynasty. His intention was to become an emperor, an imperialist, so that he owns all the means of production, all the workers, and we consume from him. This is the template that the Mzungu set in place over 100 years ago when he came here with a company called the Royal British East African Company. In fact, the Royal India Company in 1897. It changed to Imperial British East African Company in 1902. This company came to extract from us, to exploit from us, and it came to dominate us as it was doing that. In 1920, when we were formally made a colony of the British Empire, in other words, the British government came to rule, that same company became the civil service, became the so-called leadership of this new government. So a company that came to extract, exploit, and dominate us decided they became now our rulers. In fact, the domination was actually their watchmen who they turned into policemen. So the police you're seeing today are just glorified watchmen who believe the only important person that matters is the one inside the offices. You and I who pay their taxes, their salaries, are irrelevant, are bad people to be beaten. This is no different to what the Mzungu put in place. All we did was change the Mzungu to Africans who have been doing the same thing at the helm of leadership. Every single regime, apart from Kibaki, who tried for a short time to change it, every other regime has been about nothing else. The new constitution gave us the breadth to change it. And Ruto decided that it doesn't work for them. So they decided to operate outside of the Constitution of Kenya. And it very simply started with one simple action in March 2014. Duale took a bill to Parliament where it was seconded by the minority leader called John Bandi. And in that bill, they sought to amend the Constitution so that the revenues that are in government, that are received, do not have to enter the consolidated fund as per the Constitution of Kenya. One account in the Constitution of Kenya is supposed to receive all the money except to one thing called if you have a fund created by Parliament, like the housing fund, like the petroleum development fund. Those are monies that can enter there. Other than that, the consolidated fund, which is called the exchequer account at the central bank, is the recipient of all revenues, whether it is tax revenues, whether it is grants, whether it is loans. It is the recipient of all, and that is embedded in the Constitution. And in the Constitution, all that was done was copy-paste that into Public Finance Management Act. Duale brought an amendment that added C and D. And C and D, because the Constitution only had A and B, C and D were about loans. That loans do not have to enter the consolidated. Fees, loans, all these things, government to government business, does not have to enter the consolidated account. They can be flying everywhere. And with that simple action, they created a balloon which is not accountable, which the Auditor General cannot audit, which the Controller of Budget, who is empowered to approving any expenditure out of the consolidated fund, has no access to. And this balloon is simply this. We did what you call a primary account of 10 years, from July 2013 all the way to June 2023, 10 years, removing any debt expenses. So the first expense is development, which was 6 trillion. The next expense, you look at salaries, you look at county expenditure, you look at pensions, you look at operations of government. Those total expenses came to 14.6 trillion. We said, okay, what was the income from our taxes? In those 10 years, 13.3. So the so-called shortfall was only 1.3 trillion. Now, what happened? They borrowed 7.7. That was not needed, was on no budget, was not needed anywhere, had no expense. So they borrowed 6.4 trillion, $50 billion more that was required. And that is called tax in advance. And that money they swallowed, they ate it, they looted it. And they have given it to us to pay back what they have eaten. They cannot solve this problem because right now, as we are talking, 70 shillings of every 100 of the taxes that we contribute go towards paying that debt. And it is killing us. It is killing us. William Ruto today is a charlatan. He knows what they did. He can pretend all he wants that the problems came during whose time he was part of it. He will never address it because he gets exposed. They get exposed for what they are doing. And their unity is not a surprise. We have now become, the people of Kenya, the 90% of Kenyans are now their common enemy. Because if we keep pursuing this direction, they will get exposed, all of them. Anybody that touched that money over the last 10 to 12 years. Now, there's something I'm forgetting to add. That in as much as we had only a deficit of 1.3 trillion, that was the shortfall. We borrowed 7.7, 6.4 above what we needed. In the same 10 years, we paid 7 trillion from our taxes towards that debt. Since 2023 June, the last financial year, we added another 1.6 trillion from our taxes towards that debt. This year, we are going to pay 1.9 trillion towards that debt. And the interesting thing is that debt doesn't come down. Last year, this time, it was 10.5. Today, it is almost 11. It's 10.8, almost 10.9, 11 trillion. And this year, we are paying 1.9 trillion. Next year, this time, I can assure you, it will be above 12, 13, depending as we are going on the exchange rate. And I can also tell you that in the next financial year, we're going to pay another 2.1. The year after that, we're paying 2.4 trillion towards this. And it goes on to 2034 to figures that are most frightening. And we never needed it. Remember, we only needed 1 trillion in 10 years. So they have given us our slavery. We are now slaves. And anybody today who believes they are earning anything, anybody who is in corporate, for example, who is employed, your direct taxes are just about 40%, but your indirect taxes add another 30%. Today, you are paying from all that you're earning, 69% of your income towards this monster called debt. That is 70% of the tax revenue. And all they keep doing, because the 30% that is left is not enough. That just goes to the county. They need 50 shillings for salaries. They borrow more. They need another 40 for operations and maintenance. They borrow more. They are not even doing development. 12% of revenue went to development in the last financial year, and the Constitution says it must be 35. We are now in a state of no return. It is called a sinking ship. Ruto knows it. He knows he is steering a sinking ship. And all he is doing is looting as much as he can before it sinks. And he's trying to bring everybody on board so that there's no alternate voices. He wants everybody on board this ship so that he can even hang on to that 2027, right? And we can reject him. He doesn't care. He'll have taken his loot and gone, right? Because this is a sinking ship. Now, we must arrest this. We must stop this hemorrhaging. We must stop this delinquency. You can now see when Ruto is getting annoyed, he is looking unhinged because we are stopping his things. He's trying to loot and we are stopping them from Madani to, he's the looter. He's not telling you. What we are going through today are players who are coming together to protect their own interests. And we hope that they all join that ship so we can sink it and sink them before they sink this nation. We cannot wait to 2027. The time is now.
Huyo amekuwa ni Jimmy Wanjigi akisema kwamba Wakenya hawawezi kungoja hadi mwaka wa 2027 kumwondoa William Samoei Ruto, akisema kwamba revolution ni sasa hivi. Sijui na maoni gani kuhusiana na alichosema Jimmy Wanjigi? Kama uko na maoni niachie hapo kwenye comment section. Kama huja subscribe na kuomba uweze kusubscribe, finya notification bell ndio wakati wote tunakuwa na habari kama hii unakuwa mtu wa kwanza kuipata, au sio? Mimi nashukuru kwa wakati wako, nashukuru kwa kuchagua Ruto'S TV. Mara nyingine tena nakuomba uweze kusubscribe, hiyo tu ndio support nataka kutoka kwenyu, au sio? Mimi nashukuru sana kwa support yenu. Subscribe mara nyingine tena naomba, na huyo amekuwa ni Jimmy Wanjigi na kutakia mchana mwema, au sio? Asante sana kwa wakati wako.